How's it going, John? You all right?
Yeah, not bad, buddy. Not bad. Lovely day on a Sunday.
Yeah, I bet you're happy with the result in the game. Just
Yeah, it was interesting. Good for the neutral, not good for my nerves, as always.
no, I admittedly I didn't watch it, but I kind of dipped in and out of checking social media and checking the score. But how's things anyway? Good week.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. I'm trying to get back to some sort of normality at work now. So yeah, it's all good. Just glad to be working. Very mindful of that always.
Yeah, it's. I think when we had a chat in the week that getting some sort of like routine and structure and um, stuff around like your spare time, and sort of making yourself feel, I suppose, more comfortable when you're not doing something. Um, and that's something that
Yeah,
I know I do struggle with full stop, and I have for a few years for a range of reasons, really.
so I'm quite a social person, so I don't know what I'd do if I had to work from home and be stuck at home all of the time. I think I'd really miss, on top of spare time, just generally being able to interact with people, really important.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like I was saying, just for me, what I'm really trying to do at the moment is like in terms of like full time job stuff. Obviously I know sometimes you have to give and take and do stuff like in evenings and weekends, and I'm really mindful of when it's the weekend, it's the weekend, and especially when I've got my kids, I want to be present in every moment.
Mm,
Whereas at times I've probably been distant, more interested or worried about stuff that is not necessarily relevant. Whereas when it's my weekends off as such, um, I mean, when things do get back to a normal, I'm sure like my other work that I'm involved in and other projects, that will utilise my time, but trying to be mindful of enjoying my own space and company as well.
yeah, I mean that's important as well. And it must be different for you, obviously being by yourself the majority of the time. I wonder how people sort of cope with that ongoing all of the time, because I know that I'm a very social person, and if I didn't have somebody to come back to in that situation. It would be tough sometimes if you're having a bad day or a bad week.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, I'm I'm a property owner again, and very fortunate to be in that position. But prior to that, when I was sort of sofa surfing and kind of living here for a couple of years, then that transition, I've been living somewhere else, and it, like the last destination before here, when I didn't have that time, with my daughters, or seeing my nan, or work. I try to fill my spare time with work, like in any capacity, like ideally with my other work. But that's when that's probably all through the phase over the last 5 years, and I've spoken about it before in our chats. But like the sort of like the gambling and the whereas now I have structure, I have a base, I have somewhere to call home. I can um, watch stuff on TV and all the different platforms on there. But like you said, like I still struggle sometimes, and hence why like these conversations have helped me, massively. I mean, it's what Sunday, late afternoon, and the fact that I can talk and seek a bit of support, it's definitely helped me by being able to check in. And because the amount of times I must have phoned you in the past when I'm in the portable office, as I call it, and kind of using my time wisely, like because it helps me, like to check in and chat and soundboarding, and but it is hard, mate. I mean, there's times where I'm trying my best not to be on my phone, like I said to you the other day about notification. Well, you actually that told me that you removed a lot of notifications, and I've done that on my smartwatch as well as my phone. So I'm kind of that distraction is going that I can enjoy reading a book or going out. But yeah, mate, it's definitely something that has been a challenge, really.
Yeah, a sort of, it really emphasizes, I mean, I'm sure, you know, if you talk to professionals, and whether that be, you know, sort of Samaritan's, Headspace, Mind, you know, talk to your doctor, whatever, that, you know, and you're saying that you're struggling with mental health, the first thing that they always seem to go to is obviously talking about hobbies. And I'm very mindful about sort of not saying to myself, oh, I'm bored, because, you know, the opportunities to do multiple things are there. I'm definitely, as I said to you before, I struggle with sort of going out for a walk. That's not necessarily my thing. You know, I struggle to go out for a walk by myself, and I think that's probably the most important factor of it. I mean, the times that you've come down and we've done many a lap, you know, and I enjoy it when there's somebody with me. Basically, why? Because it's an opportunity to talk and, you know, get things off your chest, and, you know, it's almost a reason to talk rather than the exercise itself. But, you know, I do struggle with hobbies, and just try not to say to myself I'm bored, when really there's so many opportunities and so many things to do, and, you know, sort of reading, even writing stuff, and, you know, sort of sitting there halfway through a novel that's been there for years, and painting and other things that I know I can do, but sometimes just feel sort of demotivated to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, I've got quite a bit of a backlog of stories to talk about that. You know, when I was sort of going through I don't know if this is the right word, mate, but admittance or acceptance even of the position I was in mentally. You know, like my auntie has always been very supportive and sort of, oh, you know, you need to get similar to you get some hobbies, and I've kind of said like my hobbies I've turned into my job. You know, what I do for a job, like I class as a hobby. I really enjoy it, and the stuff that I do of an evening here, there, and everywhere, like with other work and projects and the stuff that we've been on, I class that as a job. And it's only probably been until now where I've started to really sort of look at expanding my mind, you know, reading, you know, and podcasts, like going for out for a walk and actually getting out and doing something with my time. Because I found this week in particular, I've pretty much sat where I'm sitting from 9:15 or whatever, 8:30 onwards, and because projects are sort of nearing to the end and so on, you know, I'm looking at the time. It's like, oh wow, it's 7:00, and I haven't really gone out. Whereas my nan said, oh, the other day, just go out at lunchtime. You know, you're entitled to the amount of time that I get. Actually, go out and embrace the, you know, because I'm very guilty of like cooking, whatever, nom 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 nom, carry on typing. 5 minutes later, it's come and gone. Whereas that time now to myself, I've tried to master it, mate, and I'm slowly getting better at it. But yeah, I'm with you that when I'm on.
I wonder if that's really common. You know what I mean? It's hard, isn't it, sometimes, with all of the topics and the things that we talk about, Stuart, as to whether it's unique, whether you're the only one feeling that or thinking that or acting like that. You know, I wonder how other people are coping during lockdown with not having that ability to socialize and get out and about and do things that are different from the norm. And we've said it before, but I just wonder whether, just like, if you ask the average bloke whether they have got hobbies, what do they do in their spare time? It's very easy, like you say, to end up in that situation where you're just sat in front of the TV binge watching something off, you know, Netflix, or other networks are available. You know, it's just a case of what else do you do? I get really into certain things, and then that's all I ever seem to do.
Yeah, it's and I think the one thing I've started to do, and me and you have spoken quite a lot, like away from here, about, you know, like your circle of influence, your real friends and stuff. And I've probably got, I'd say, apart from like two very close family members, I'm talking like four friends, and obviously you're one of them. You'd be pleased to know. And
That's good.
but even then, like away from that, I sometimes feel, and I don't know if I'm sort of overthinking this, but I feel like I'm forcing the conversation. Like I'm sort of seeking affirmation, like reaching out texting, you know, because I'm by myself sometimes. I don't mind like vegging out or, like you said, Netflix, Disney, there are other stations as such, but playing on the Super Nintendo. But even then, I still sort of reach for the phone to, or message or inbox someone or blah, blah, blah. And it's whereas, even though I'm not saying that's fake from me, it's kind of been forced a little bit,
Yeah.
so that's kind of where
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of talk about this recently on, lots of social media platforms and stuff about this concept of loneliness, Stuart. And I wonder really that, that that old adage of you can be in a room of crowded people and still feel lonely,
I,
and how that's heightened, I think, by where if you're actually alone, just that need to reach out and talk to somebody, to just have a conversation, like you can watch things. And I always say, you're watching things, but you're not sharing it with someone. You're not actually having a reaction to talking with someone. I think that's like the popularity, if you like, of that TV program Gogglebox, is just the reaction of watching something together with somebody else. And even that is just, I don't think you're alone, Stuart, in that forcing yourself to reaching out, messaging people, because really what you're saying is, I want to have a conversation. I want to, I want to talk to another human being. And I don't think, I think that's where that sort of loneliness comes from. It's just sort of not having those interactions. That's why I say, go back to what I said in the beginning, really, just feeling really blessed, to be in a work where you do get to know people, a bit like the old TV program Cheers, where everybody knows your name. There's something very valuable about that. And I can't imagine what it would be like if, you didn't have to leave work. It's totally possible. Didn't have to leave home to go to work, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, something else that I'm sort of, I think it's good for me to talk about this, that obviously when it all sort of started, the path that I've spoken about before, I kind of felt like I genuinely, I'd speak to you, I'd speak to my best friend and, family members, but they kind of weren't aware of it. And I don't think I was, and I wouldn't admit to it, but I felt lonely, dare I say, 24/7. And I kind of felt potentially overthinking this, victimized, or, it doesn't matter what I did, it was still crap. Like I'd do it, not in a work sense, by the way, I want to make that clear. Out of work, the best way I described it to people is in work, I felt like Superman, like I'd, not long, I think it was just before going to Kenya, and obviously then officially starting our real pushing on with our friendship and sort of professional projects as such. But prior to that, stuff was going well, and then things away from work were starting to sort of go downhill. So in work, I felt like Superman. Out of work, I felt like Banana Man. I kind of went from one extreme to the next, and it just happened regularly where, stuff wasn't particularly great away from work. And I sort of won't go into detail, but yeah, it was bad. And I just felt alone quite a lot. And I still recall why I drove, and I can tell you which one it is. It's not a million miles away from where I live now, but I just remember driving home, and all of a sudden, like, I saw that coral, and that urge to like indicate, and in my head, like I've driven down that road a million times before, and I don't know why I kind of felt like, oh, would people, no one knew who I was. No one was going to go, oh, Batesy Stew, as you go in, blah, blah, blah. But I remember going in and thinking, like, I kind of felt like I was not accepted, but people in there were similar to me in the sense of, they're alone. And obviously, fast forward so many years, like, it wasn't until I actually, like, once again, we've spoken about the Oslo trip, but really opened up and thought, if I don't accept this, if I don't really talk about how I feel and how I feel alone, people were like, well, it's that communication thing, like, oh, you should have said something, we're here for you. And, there's obviously a bit of a clash with some members of the family in disagreements, and like any family, mate, you know, I'm not going to sit here and it was a one-way street. You know, it obviously wasn't. You know, it was a two-way process. But what I would urge people, sort of before I let you finish, let you have a word in, mate. Sorry, but is feeling having that conversation, actually reaching out and talking to someone, and yeah.
But as an expectation, Stuart, that I think it's really, really powerful what you said, and you know, I for one appreciate you being open and honest about that, because I think that's partly the purpose of what we're doing. You know, by having these video chats, is to keep being real about how we're feeling, and it's not just a case of making up a reason to talk to people. Do you know what I mean? But also accepting that you don't know what's going on the other end of that phone. So, you know, you might have you might interpret things wrong, and I'm very mindful of that. You know, this whole personalization. You know, if somebody doesn't answer you back within 5 minutes, it's not because they hate you. It's not because they don't give a shit. You just don't know what's happening the other end. They might be at work. They might be, you know, because I work certain shift patterns and have days off at different times. I'm always calling you, and you're going, "Well, I'm at work."
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I just chance my arm. That's how I do it. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, I probably think you are at work, but you never know. He might be having one of his, you know, half an hour lunches and taking a walk down the shops. Let's see if I can catch him. But it's that mentality, and I think it's really, you know, honest. And I just wish more people were honest like that. That it does feel lonely, and it doesn't matter who you're with or where you are, and it's not a reflection on anybody. It's more of a reflection on society and how we're built to be social, and a lot of those outlets have been taken away, and it must be really tough. If, like I said, that's why I'm just stopping for a minute and thinking about if I actually lived alone, as opposed to did have, you know, a wife to come back to and talk to, how difficult that would have been magnified in my head. And just a sense of, you know, I was watching a TED talk the other day about this, about like those principles and what, you know, the pursuit of happiness, as we talked about it before. And really, you know, as a human, it's about having a sense of belonging, Stuart. And I think that's what can be missed sometimes by working in an environment where there's other people, in an office, on a building site, whatever it might be. Do you have a sense of belonging? Like I said, you know, going to a place where people know your name. There's something really potent about that.
I mean,
but then there's also a sense of purpose.
Sorry, mate, I interrupted, but for me, it's like I agree with what you said. You know, I feel like in work or projects, I do feel validated. You know, I feel I'm relatively good at what I do, and I have that professional and associate network, and I feel like part of something. But and once again, these are still things I still think about, you know, because when you live by yourself, you know, your brain sometimes goes 10 to the dozen, or I'll go for a walk. And it was kind of like what was going on away from work. As I said, like Superman during the day, Banana Man the minute I stepped out of the office. And it was that acceptance of how I felt, really. And, you know, like, was I once again being quite open there? Like, I felt like I had a life during work, and you know what I was doing, but out of work, I didn't want to be about, mate. Simple as, you know. And that's a bit. But it's only until I sort of really like.
Isn't that about expectations, though, Stuart? Do you know what I think? That's where does that come from? I've always fascinated you. It's like, yeah, but who told you, you know, what to do, how to be? You know what I mean?
I mean, sorry, mate, giving you an insight and just being transparent. Like, I think it was a case of, you know, stuff was obviously I was no longer with my daughter's mum, and stuff wasn't particularly great behind the scenes at home and other bits and bobs. But I kind of felt, you know what it's like. You look around and you caught like scorekeepers. You know, everywhere I looked, it was like, you know, yeah, I had a full-time job and other bits and bobs, and at the time, exciting stuff with you. Just started with SR, but away from all that, it's like I haven't got a property. I kind of live here, there, and everywhere because I do that many things. You know, luckily for me, I don't think my kids have been, you know, because I was still paying what I had to pay, put stuff in the bank, but I was that expectation, like I must adhere to this, I must do that, or I kind of felt like that, and it got to the point where, well, it's spiraled out of control, mate, as you know, and it got to the point where I'll either continue what I'm doing, and who knows what would have happened to the position. To, you know, I'm in this very minute. It's kind of realizing, well, because I don't have this and have that, that doesn't make me less successful than, you know, the average person. You know, like I think you told me not so long ago, well, it was you, but I forgot the exact stat, that there's only so many % of people who are in the position that I am, i.e. have a job, have a mortgage,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. And in the grand scheme of things, I think, well, actually, I'm lucky, like extremely lucky. And, you know, and it's not all about material things. And so, yeah, mate.
Yeah, that, I mean, that comes from if one world was a village. You know, it's mind blowing. This is what I mean about, you know, people throw out, you know, sound bites and motivational quotes all over the place, and you know, it's just have an attitude of gratitude. And sometimes that's just hard, Stuart. That's what it really boils down to. It's just hard not to accept. Oh, actually, if one world was a village, if you've got electricity, you've got a bed, you've got a fridge, you've got internet, you're in the top 2% richest people in the world. And just like, yeah, that's all very well, but I'm feeling shit.
Yeah, yeah. I used to think that a lot, you know, about myself. I used to think, oh, wow, like bollocks, you know, and chipping away. That's what, you know, another saying, what I've stole, well, magpied from you. That's all I've tried to do. And, you know, I never thought I'd be very, and I've obviously had help, and like many people on the planet have, but I do feel very lucky now that that consistent graft, that being patient, that it's not going to be an overnight success. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day type stuff. Um,
It's about being content, I think. I think that's really where I truly, when I find that inner peace, it is when I just, again, acceptance and just relax into, yeah, but who told you that sitting down and watching 6 hours of Netflix is a bad thing? If you start to get into that mindset, then you'll just be following whatever the latest trend is. You know, you'll just be doing what every other person is, you know, doing, just because you want to conform. And it's just about finding things that are good for you, that are healthy, what works for you. And that's different strokes for different folks, Stuart. And I think it's just finding that balance of, if you feel it's not right, then clearly you need to act and do something upon that. And if it becomes a pattern, it's like the difference between feeling sad, low, you know, lonely or whatever. But is that a pattern over a couple of weeks? Then is that affecting your normal life? That's when they start talking about depression, you know, and other habits. And, you know, there's many websites that you can go on, do that checklist. When it becomes a pattern. Yeah. When it's not just a couple of days, it's a couple of weeks.
But that was the thing that, you know, sharing my lived experiences. That's what I didn't recognise, you know, right at the very beginning. And, you know, I remember feeling not so great before, you know, to stop it. And I was a bit arrogant about it, if I'm being honest, a bit naive. And, you know, and it started to, like, the patterns started to emerge, and I kind of recognised it. But then, obviously, once again, going back to that Oslo conversation, you know, well, these weren't new words, but you know, I sort of put them in my terms. You kind of like, you know, you're chatting the same shit, like, and there's no action. Like, what are you going to do to recognise it? And it was then really where the penny sort of dropped, and I thought, like, wow, like I've probably just been mugging myself off or going through the process. And I've mentioned it before, and I sort of don't want to repeat the story about watching that TED talk and that Justin Rees Larkin one. And I just remember watching it and clearly, like, imagining it was me on the stage. I was like, wow, like, you know, pretty much like for like. Obviously, he was in the army and whatever, and what do you call it, stockbroker in London. But I just remember, like, once again, I won't mention family members' names, but going, look, it's now or never. Like, here's the video. This is it. Like, and ever since then, I just feel like my pattern of behaviour and recognising and they call it in the world of I mean, I won't. Well, not many people would know this, but I think it's fair to talk about it. You know, I did receive some counselling. A good friend of mine, she seeked it for me through Aquarius in Birmingham. I'm not so sure if they're dotted here, there, and everywhere. And it was kind of like it was quite real. Like you go in and like stereotyping, mate. Like because I've worked with, as you know, like through other projects and stuff before, and like me being a recipient of it instead of in a professional context. And they ask you questions, and what kids, and straight away, bang, like are they at risk, and this, that, and the other. And I used to think like, wow, like this is real, like this is genuine.
Mm.
And, it was up to 12 weeks, and it depended on what it was. And there was weeks I took it seriously, and once I'm not going to lie, there was weeks where I kind of told a few Pinocchios. But I just remember the one thing she spoke about was the gambling triangle, and obviously there's three sides to a triangle. One was access, money, and time. And she kind of, you said about time, like there's plenty of time where I could have gone to the gym at the time, I could have gone for a walk, could have visited someone, I could have spoke to you, I could have done something, but my brain was telling me that's not what I want to do. So my time, even though when it was occupied, I'd still sort of like go to those shops. And obviously the access, it got to the point where I self-excluded myself. I'm like, you name it, mate, I've self-excluded myself like everywhere. And that was a bit of a scary process as well. Like you have to take a portrait of yourself kind of not smiling. And I felt like I was expecting to have one of those signs where it's got my name and, like the numbers. But I remember sending that off. And I just remember like the changing of my mindset and my sort of, I suppose, my self-love for myself, really, like out of work. And then the last one, go on, mate.
Go on. I just think it's interesting. You relate it back to that. Do you think the same process applies then to sort of how you and I, Beth, talked about sort of feeling lonely and forcing, that reaching out process, that it's about time and just recognizing, and accepting the situation as in, this is how I'm feeling and what action can I then take? And I think that's probably a good way of sort of summarizing. Oh, actually, if you're feeling like that, what we're advocating is what we do with each other is we reach out and we take an action. So, like you would say, it's the whole concept of having a sponsor, isn't it? Is if you're feeling tempted, you'd reach out to your sponsor and explain, this is how I'm feeling, and this is what's happening, and you're trying to break that moment in time.
Yeah. I mean, big time. It's. I mean,
isn't that the same then, Stuart? I mean, if you're feeling like really low, lonely, whatever it might be in that sort of situation, and feeling pretty shit and sort of stuck like that isn't the same concept should be applied.
Yeah, definitely. And I said that in my full-time job and the other bits and bobs that I'm involved with. I haven't really thought of a name for it yet, apart from the triangle, because obviously I don't really massively disclose, because it's not always appropriate, and I try and be congruent and transparent. But I always talk about the triangle, access, time, and money. And now for those who are lonely, there's three sides. Now it's not about, because what they say for the gambling triangle, once you break one of those sides, you have no triangle. Whereas the role reversal for loneliness is trying to I think having all, the way I would describe it anyway, is having all three sides, and not doing silly things with your money, but that time is me and you check in quite a lot, and I look forward to that, and I look forward to these chats, and but the pub.
Yeah, maybe using that that metaphor, that analogy that you're using, then access is about access to people.
I think it's just access to I'd
say if you're thinking I'm sitting there and I'm feeling lonely and I feel like I'm not social, I'm not talking to anybody, it's about access, isn't it? So have you got access to a mobile phone? Have you got people that you can go out and meet and greet, go to the shops? I've said this to you before, like living in, bedsit as a teenager and not speaking, to another human for like 3 days. is a really weird sensation.
It's God,
And it's just like making sure you had access to, have I got access to these people? And that's really why we came up with the name Two Blokes and a Phone. If you've got a phone, then find ways to reach out and don't just sit there, as I said before, like with that personalization going on in your head. Oh, they won't be bothered. Oh, they're too busy. Just reach out to whoever, even if it's multiple people. Someone's going to reply.
yeah,
Someone's going to feedback.
it's the I mean, GA. I enjoyed it for a bit, and it got to the point where I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't serving its purpose. But for me, I understand why people go, because, like you said, access once a week. And once again, I'm obviously not going to disclose names, but one individual who I still keep in contact with, like he was really good, and he was in a relatively senior position within his role, and not that that's necessarily relevant, but we had a bit in common. And I just remember the words like, "What are you doing today, Sunday? There's a meeting in Coventry. I'll meet you in Dudley," and that was it, you know. And it was that, and I enjoyed that for a bit, you know, because I knew. I'm not so sure if the meetings are still. Obviously, it's all probably Zoom based now, but prior to, you know, like Friday nights in Dudley, I just remember going, and once again, like, you know, because I used to walk back, you know, my old man would drop me off, and I think it was like part of that healing process to actually like make it more aware and get over that being, you know, the black sheep potentially. And he's like, well, I'm trying to do something about it. I'm trying to actually like having access. So for me, mate, the key message are anyone that watches this, access to a phone. You know, on your phone, you know, you can find support groups. You know, you can chat to John and myself. You know, emails, the Facebook messengers, Snapchats, the rest is, you know, but then you can potentially find support groups that can help you. And that's what I determine by access. You know, yeah, everyone's got access to go out and have a walk, but having access to people who have those lived experiences, and that's something I'm really priding myself on at the moment, is in my job, is similar to what I mean you do, the Streets Revolution stuff, and because it's those lived experiences and those conversations are there. But yeah, access is key, mate. You know, definitely. I mean, if I'll be real, if I didn't do that, if I didn't reach out and have access, I'm genuinely not so sure where I'd be now. And I mean that quite openly. You know, I genuinely don't have a Scooby where I would be.
It must be really frustrating, because not everybody, and, you know, recognizing not everybody is as fortunate, you know, as you and I, you know, in the sense of, you know, I think the majority of people probably do have access to a telephone. And I think it's just getting past those fears and obstacles, really, because that's what I like to do. I've done it myself this morning, reached out to 2 or 3 people, already spoke to you this morning. I spoke to my mate Will. You know what I mean? It's just a case of, yeah, I want to talk to someone. And rather than they're not interested, like I said, it's really interesting how the brain works like that. And, you know, you can interpret things so badly and so wrongly if you're not getting an instant message back. And, you know, people say, oh yeah, I'll bail you back, you know, in 5 minutes, and then they don't. And you start to personalize all of that stuff to you. And I just think, you know, in that situation, like you say, access, time and money, you know, yeah, fine, if you haven't got the money, I understand that, but it's really important to access the right things, and to not sit on that time for so long that it becomes a habit, becomes the norm for you. You think you're the only person, and you're just stuck, and you become stuck, because it's only going one way, isn't it? When you start that mode of thinking, and somebody else needs to interject and change the way you're thinking. It's really hard to keep thinking the way you're thinking if you're actually having a conversation with somebody else.
Yeah, it's the key message, really. Like you said, mate, is having a conversation. You know, trying not to personalize it. You know, the amount of times I used to overthink. Well, you know, I'm a bit of an overthinker, and touch with, you know, I'm not as much anymore. But as long as I know that I can reach out and I'm in control of reaching out, and I think you made a very important point earlier that, you know, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors, like with other people. So you, even though you're reaching out for the benefit of yourself, you reaching out to an individual could be something that they genuinely need.
Mm.
And that's something that I'll try and pride myself on. Though is I'll try not to do it every day, like check in. But because that's obviously not always the case. But every now and again I'll come across something on WhatsApp, or I haven't spoke to that person for a bit. How's it going? You all right? And going from there.
And I think it works the other way, Stuart, as well, though. That if you get a message from someone, it's so easy to sort of get bogged down in our own little worlds. Oh yeah, I'll deal with that. You therefore don't know how urgent it is, what the need is behind that, and like you said, just a simple response back can be enough to go, yeah, I heard you, but I can't do it now.
Yeah.
Be honest. Yeah, I can't do it now, but can I call you later? Can I, and then follow that up. It's just about, treating people like we always say, like you would want to be treated. If you're reaching out, you want someone at least to acknowledge, I can't do it now. I'm right in the middle of work. Yeah. You can't drop everything sometimes. That's just real. Yeah. But, if you can then respond and go, well, yeah, I hear you. And then I think, just, ultra cheesy, but wouldn't the world be a better place if everybody thought like that?
Well, I agree so. And I think on that note, mate, I think that's a great end, great end to our chat. I think if everyone thought about checking in and being honest and congruent and helping one another, I think that'd be really, really key. But so for those of you that are watching, hopefully you're enjoying our conversations. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please check in with us. Me and John have spoken a lot. We're really keen to help and share experiences. If you'd like to come on and join us,
I would echo Stuart. I just want to add that I'd love for people to tell us what they think about it, but more importantly, what topics they want us to get our opinions on. Just what's going on in their life, if it resonates with them, sharing is caring, as we say, and we just want to know, does it make sense to you, or is it just us that feels like that sometimes? Be good to share and get that out there in the open.
Yeah, definitely. But mate, it's a good catching up, and I'll chat to you soon, mate. All right.
All right, take care, buddy.
Top man.